everyone was made by God for the purpose of reflecting his image, even if they're not doing it, even if they're totally rejecting him and rebelling and turning away from him, they still were made in his image, still made intentionally by him. And that gives us a conviction in the way that we treat other people, even those who are rejecting God and living in sin. We need to see ourselves and each other for who we are, made in God's image. Welcome to Pastors with Pour-Overs, conversations about coffee and the Christian faith. My name is Cody.
And my name is Kyle. Welcome, Cody, to our conversation.
Thank you.
I feel like we never greet each other.
It's true. It's, I guess, yeah, because this, for our viewers wouldn't know, but this is also kind of like catching up time for us. We chat a little bit before we start recording, now that we don't see each other every day like when we started this. But
Yeah, it's sad times, that's for sure. Not seeing each other every day. I miss it so much.
I kind of do, but I feel like you're being sarcastic.
Well, I'll let you keep guessing on that, Cody. What did you... I'm just kidding. What do you have for coffee today? That's one thing we don't talk about before because we don't want to ruin it for the podcast.
So I haven't bought new coffee in a while because I had too much. So I'm going through, I took a bunch to my parents and drank a ton and left some there. I'm drinking the Palette, which has been in my background basically since we started doing this remote. And I didn't want to finish it because it's a beautiful bag, like Palette's design. I just love their design language. But I'm having it. It's pretty good. I don't think it tastes old. I think I just I don't know, maybe a little bit. I think I just should have ground it more coarsely. I used the Calvarzell's double. I did it. I was trying to get my times correct because I think I do. You're supposed to do like your first big pour slowly and your second pretty quick. And I think I always do my first pour too quickly. But that's something I'm trying to get better at. It kind of depends on your kettle too, I guess. Like I have one that's huge and it pours very fast. Even though it is like a gooseneck, but a lot of like James Hoffman, his V60 method is so specific and precise, and is like for 15 seconds do small circles. I'm like, man, I can't track with that. But yeah, it's Colombian. I love Colombian coffees. Nelson Martinez Black Condor Hula. So they just named Palette. I don't know. You've had Palette before, right? They're like a Vancouver standard. Yeah, they just named their coffees after the farmer, which I think is pretty cool. This one's supposed to taste like kiwi and floral honey with smooth chocolate. And actually, I think that's pretty accurate. You get a little bit of kiwi taste in there. It's quite good. What about you? What you got?
Well, I today have, it's number 6 coffee company from Nelson, BC. I got this from a place called 8 Ounce Coffee. They do a lot of like, you can get like almost anything from them online.
I just ordered a cup from them.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, they have
cup.
cups and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, they have those? Oh.
Yeah.
I went through such an ordeal to get mine. That is good to know for the future. But yeah, they have a bunch of coffee as well that you can buy, but they do a lot of like, cups and brewing things and things like that. So one of the things that I try to keep down on shipping costs. So then I bought it through them. Because a lot of times when you just want to buy, like they have a bunch of different coffee companies that they source from and then they sell. So then you can get it from different places. And because they're in Calgary, I can just go drive there and pick it up.
Nice.
Yeah. So then it saves you on shipping costs. But this is called the Rabbit Hole filter blend. That's literally the reason I got it, because I think it's kind of a cool name and it reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. So I got that. It's a blend of Colombia and Nicaragua, which is cool. I've been doing a lot of blends lately, I actually realized. No reason. I just have been.
Yeah, so, I think you mentioned that. I don't remember if it was on air or just in our own conversation, but we were saying we kind of just avoided blends for a while because single origin is great because you can get the specific tastes of the region. It also is easier to prove that it's fair trade or direct trade when it's only coming from one farm. But blends are awesome.
Yeah, and I think the trend in a sense is single origin right now. So it used to be fair trade more, and now it's like single origin, single farm even, and like things like that. This one, they say sourced from family-run farms and independent co-ops. So
nice.
They have that information stuff on there, but yeah, it's actually pretty good. It's so it says medium body, which I don't usually pay attention if they have that on there. But now I get it, because when I first brewed it, when I first got it, I was like, oh, it feels like very like hollow and empty and like almost watery. And I adjusted some things with the grinds, but it's just mainly because it's more of a medium body that they went for.
Interesting.
So I think that goes more with like your like mouthfeel and how, like, I don't know, I use the term syrupy a lot, like how syrupy it tastes. So, but it's good. I really like it. I also got an espresso from them too, which I haven't tried yet, but I'll keep you updated on that.
All right. Well, we're back into our discussion through the 1689 confession, and I had one of our listeners commented that they're like, I was wondering why you're going through this confession, and I guess we haven't said it in a while. So if you're just jumping into this episode, you're not familiar with us or what we're doing. Our goal basically is just to help people have conversations to figure out what you believe. We found, especially our generation, a lot of people going through deconstruction and or whether they are staying in their faith, they just have a desire to learn more. A lot of people don't know what all they believe. They know like the very fundamental things, the things that get repeated a lot in church. And what confessions are is they're these massive, comprehensive statements of faith that have been worked on by like a multitude of pastors and elders over the course of years. They've been affirmed by like tons of pastors and churches and upheld. So they've stood the test of time. This one's called the 1689 because that's when it was published, was in the year 1689. And it's the one that we generally hold to. There's like one footnote that I don't remember what chapter it is, but there's something that says about the Pope that's a little, it's a product of its time.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that someday. But it's a good way to just cover lots of Christian beliefs, use it as a jumping off point. It is not replace scripture, but it is something that points us to scripture.
And I'll also say that confessions like the 1689 tend to be more comprehensive than your typical statement of faith on a church website. And so what I've seen a few times is what churches will do is they say, we adhere to like this confession, and they'll also have like a congregational statement of faith. Just kind of the confession kind of fills it in more. There's a lot of churches where like I wouldn't be comfortable going to on a Sunday morning or supporting what they're doing, but you could read through their statement of faith and agree with everything it says. So 1689 ends up being a little bit more comprehensive on that end too.
All that being said, we're in chapter 4, which is on creation, and we're going to try to get through the whole thing. I think we can. There's a lot that like kind of harkens back to previous chapters. So we've talked about those in previous episodes, and just for sake of time, we're not going to rehash a lot. But do you want to read the chapter or the paragraph? Let's do the first one.
Sure. Just the paragraph. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Paragraph 1. In the beginning, it pleased God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit for the manifestation of the glory of his eternal power, wisdom, and goodness to create or make the world and all things therein, whether visible or invisible, in the space of 6 days, and all very good.
All right.
There you go.
I love the detail, like how clearly they state in the first segment, which is going to be our first point, that creation was a Trinitarian work. In the beginning, it pleased God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Like they could have just said God, and we'd be like, yeah, we just trust that it's referring to a Trinitarian God. But they're very clear. All three parties were involved in this, and I love that. That's something that stands out to me from this chapter or this paragraph. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah. Well, no, I was going to say the same thing. Like, it's very specific in saying all those things because we do point to the fact that all three are involved in creation. You have in Genesis 1, even that verse of the Spirit of the Lord was hovering over the waters, I believe is what it says.
Over I have it memorized as over the surface of the deep. I don't know what translation that is.
Yeah, it's different like in quite a few. That's why I was trying to think, is it say the void or the deep or I don't know. But yeah, the Spirit of the Lord was hovering, right? And we tend to relate that to the Holy Spirit. And so even in Genesis 1, you have that, even though, in the first 3 verses, it's not explicitly like, this God is a Trinitarian God, meaning 3 in 1, and explaining it, right? So
there's also there's the detail in Genesis where he says we and us, like let us create in our image, let us create it. It's a subtle thing, and it's interesting to think of like the people or like people groups, early Judaism and stuff that had the Pentateuch but struggle with the idea of a Trinitarian God when he does use a plural pronoun for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's an example as well of like, what would you call it? I think the term might be progressive revelation, where God throughout history, we see it now kind of in full in the scriptures now that we have them as a whole, but like was progressively revealing himself to the world and to his people. And obviously that all culminated in Christ coming, who was, as the Bible says, the exact representation of God. But in the beginning, you have these like kind of hints at it. And now we can look back and see like, oh, he said we can now think of that in terms of, because he's a Trinity, because of what else he's revealed to us. And all that points to the fact that creation truly is a display of his character and his attributes. It's what does it say there? It's a manifestation for the manifestation of the glory of his eternal power, wisdom, and goodness. Like the reason that he created was to show those things. And that's showing like the Trinity at work in all of it. And so that's what one of the things that creation does for us, is it manifests God to us.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today because we've talked before about this song, What a Beautiful Name, and how it's such a good song. But there's this one line where he's like, you didn't want heaven without us. And it's like, why? Why did you have to put that just weak, watery nonsense line in there? But I was thinking about that today, and I was like, yeah, we get this idea sometimes, and I think I held this for a lot of my life, not because anyone told me, but it's just sort of what I had worked out, that it's like God made us because he was lonely, or like he needed friends, basically. So that's why he made or what he created, but he created as like an overflow of himself. And like, I think this is actually pretty simple to grasp if you're a creative person at all. I create music. I make lo-fi beats. I make like 2 cents. I don't create out of a need. I create out of an overflow of my creativity because I like have joy or I have some feelings. I have something I want to express, and God created to display aspects of himself. Romans chapter 1 is I believe the confession footnotes this, but I also just thought of this myself right away. It's a strong testament to this, where Paul says, "For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse." They are without excuse, referring to, those who deny the existence of God, is the context Paul's discussing there.
Yeah, exactly. And we call that specifically, like that verse talks to us about general revelation, where anyone can look in creation and see the trees and the mountains and how things work, even like, even the study of science, right? You can see how things work. And through that, you can be like, okay, someone created this. There is a God to that. And that's what Paul's arguing right there off the bat, is that all of us can see a glimpse of God through his creation. His invisible attributes are clearly perceived through the creation of the world. He goes on to say that we suppress that, and we go on and live like he's not there. But at least in creation, we can see it because it is a manifestation of who he is. And it's to our, like, we gain the benefit of that. So like, he didn't create out of a need to have us, or to, I don't know, to, in whatever way we try to make it, but we receive the benefit of that, to see his glory, to see his character, his love and his justice on display in our world, and in our lives as well, which is for us all the benefit, and that's drives us to why we do worship him.
Yeah, it's something I love to just harp on. I've probably said it 3 or 4 times since we've been making this podcast, but I'll just keep saying it, is we struggle with the idea of, God creates for his glory, to display his glory. And we're like, oh, that doesn't sound fun to me. Or that doesn't sound enjoyable. And just the reality is we're just way too self-focused. But it also is a misunderstanding, because we get joy from other people's glory or other things' glory all the time. Like and I'll still talk about times that, like, there's a coffee we used to sell at a cafe that I never really liked, but then when I went to Kyle's one time, you made it in your Chemex, brought out all the flavor, it tasted phenomenal. I was like, wow, Kyle, this is a great coffee, you did such a great job. What was I doing? I was giving you glory, or like even less, taking yourself out of it more. I see a beautiful mountain scene, absolutely just phenomenal. I see it all the time where we live, driving up the highway when it's clear, you can see the white capped mountains, white peak mountains, whatever. This morning, driving to church, the sun was rising behind these like mountains, absolutely beautiful. Yeah. God's getting glory. I'm like, the mountains get some glory, but God gets the glory in that one. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. God's amazing. He built this, and I'm getting joy. It's not like hurtful or like self-denial necessarily. I mean, in a way, but like, it's not a boring or bad or sad thing to give God glory and to acknowledge that creation is for his glory.
Yeah. And that all that was made very good, as the 16:9 says it, but it's straight out of Genesis 1, right? After each day of creation, it says, and it was good, and it was good. And that's just pointing to the fact that God made the physical world, for one. Like he actually made this world, and he made it in the way that he intended to, and made it in a very good way. But also it once again points to that, like, he made good things for us to enjoy as well. Like it's amazing when you start thinking about, like, even animals and how many different species and whatever, like colors and weird looking animals and really cool looking animals and all this stuff. And it's like, that all came from the mind of God for us to enjoy, to see, and to marvel at. But here's the controversial thing, Cody. He created in 6 days, did he?
Oh yeah. That's just basic Christian belief. Yeah, I mean, the Bible said it, I believe it. That's that. I'm trying so hard. I wanted to be harsher. I was gonna I feel like we were both raised in that though. Like you've mentioned before going to like creation conferences, right? Like, or what do you call them? Not Christian festivals. That's a music thing. Creation conference. Is that right?
Yeah. We like our church even had some, like there's big ones and stuff. But like even our church would bring in someone to talk about creation and stuff like that. And it'd be like creation conference weekend or whatever.
It's fun times where you learn about dinosaurs, which I was taught didn't exist. I was taught that dinosaurs were a myth meant to distract us from how young the earth is. And we're saying this, we don't mean to be like scoffing either. Like we do it for
full disclosure. Like I'm still a literal 6-day creationist. Like I haven't thrown it off or anything. Yeah, so like we just make fun of it because it's, you know.
Yeah, we make fun of the like crazy like linchpin, everything hangs on this belief idea. And even like, and there's room, like I am not a 6,000-year-old earthist or whatever. And like, we don't need to get into the details, but I would still say like, I don't have a reason to not believe that it was made in 6 days. I've watched really interesting conversations with, what was it? It was like some sort of physicist, the kind that studies space. I can't remember what it's called, but he was explaining how when you look at the history of time, the order that things developed is perfectly in line with the Christian record of the 6 days. As far as the confession is using the language of Scripture. Scripture says 6 days. Did it say period of time? What's that word mean, Kyle?
Yom. Yeah. Well, and that's the question, right? Is like when people read this and stuff, is the confession saying like, if you want to hold to the 69 confession, do you have to believe in 6 literal, like 24-hour days? Or is it using the language of Scripture? I think both of us would say it's using the language of Scripture. And yeah, you're talking about that word, the Hebrew word yom, which people will debate over like constantly over that one word and how important it is for it being a literal 24-hour day period like us. On the other hand, then you'll have other people. I'm honestly blanking on this, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. But then people will be like, well, if there was no sun, then you couldn't calculate a day. So you couldn't even calculate a day until he made the sun. And it's like, oh my goodness. Like it just gets insane, honestly. And so when it comes to like, is the 689 talking about 6 literal days? Potentially, but could you hold to it without holding to a literal 24-hour day period? I think so. Because you're using the language of Scripture.
Yeah. And this is something we believe isn't something to divide over. I'd say question why you believe what you do and make sure that you have a consistent hermeneutic. You're not just like, well, I'm going to throw out Genesis because this science, whatever, like think it through, be reasonable, like consider Scripture fairly, but I don't think it's the point. Like the Genesis wasn't written in the style of a science textbook. Like a lot of it was written, like there's arguments about is it poetic or not, but even if it is, a lot of the original, like a lot of Hebrew tradition, Jewish tradition was poetic, and it's because it's easier to memorize poetry. It's easier to memorize songs. So in very important things that need to be remembered were written in like poetic form and stuff. But really the important thing is that God created as a Trinity for his glory. That's what we all want to affirm that we should all be on the same page about.
Yeah, and that's really what the creation story is all about in the end, right? The rest of the scripture, constantly God's referred to as creator, one who created. Even in like apologetics in the Bible, when guys like the Apostle Paul are trying to argue for God as being the one true God, he points to creation, the God who created, in Acts on Mars Hill, right? And so that's the thing. We have to understand the intention of the Bible, and then look at what it's saying through that lens. And the intention is not to make this scientific claim of 6 Lord's days. It's to say, look, God created all of this. And sometimes we can take it too far. But that's paragraph 1.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah, here, I'll read this one. After God had made all other creatures, he created man, male and female, with reasonable and immortal souls, rendering them fit unto that life to God for which they were created, being made after the image of God in knowledge, righteousness, and true holiness, having the law of God written in their hearts and power to fulfill it, and yet under a possibility of transgressing, being left to the liberty of their own will, which was subject to change. That says a lot.
Says a lot. Yeah. And we've spent a lot of time on the first paragraph and everything. People are probably starting to think, oh man, if they're going to get through the whole chapter, we're going to be here for a while, but we're going to keep motoring through this because we've talked about a lot of this stuff before already. So we don't have to get into every detail, but very important paragraph though on mankind and the creation of man. A few things to pull out of it though. One is that we are created immortal. We have a beginning, but we have no end. Whether you're a Christian or not, you don't just go off into nothingness after this life. So you have a beginning, but there is not an end. We are created immortal in that sense. And also you can comment on that if you want, but also the next thing we have is like we were made to reflect God, made in his image, which I think is one of the key things to take from this paragraph.
Yeah, I think that's the important part. Like there's the comment there about, their free will, and we've talked so much about this, and we don't want to just be the Calvinism guys. There's a lot more to talk about. So like we have episodes on free will, episodes on election, and we will end up coming back. There's a chapter on free will later. But yeah, being made to reflect God, made in his image, is such an important base theology. Like the most important things we should understand is who God is, which is what previous chapters have been talking about, and the whole rest of the confession is going to be talking about who God is and who we are. And who we are is informed by who he is because we are made to reflect him. And part of that is as moral beings, which is to say that we're made with a conscience. Basically, we're made to think and act in a certain way. The confession says having his law written on our hearts and our conscience. Yeah, we have inherently we have a discernment of what's right and wrong that just animals and plants don't have. That is part of his character in us, that we have that inner sense, of stealing isn't great, hurting people isn't great. Like, even though a lot of science and a lot of the reason why I came back to Christianity when I started to pick things apart and deconstruct is that if you fully discard God, there is basically no basis for a lot of our inherent morality, a lot of our conscience. And that existence of it is a testament to our being made in his image.
And that's a huge apologetic point that you made, right? When it comes to arguing for the existence of God, is that kind of law written on our hearts, our conscience, our morality that we have. And We totally understand as well, like people who aren't Christians or have no religious affiliation at all will say, well, we as humans collectively create up our morals. So we'd say, you know, why is murder wrong? And say, oh, as a society, we have deemed that's not right and that's wrong. But beyond it just being a law, there's something grotesque and awful about murder that we all feel, even if it wasn't a law. So then where does that innate thing come from? That's what you're kind of talking about. It's just a huge apologetic point for the existence of God in the first place. But we have that. And then this is getting into the next paragraph, so I can read that too. Sure. But we also see that Adam and Eve had this like perfect free will and they still blew it. Like they had the law written on their hearts. They were created and God said, go, and they still messed up. So here's paragraph 3, which talks about it a little bit more. Besides the law written in their hearts, they received a command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which while they kept, they were happy in their communion with God and had dominion over the creatures. So in creation, God creates male and female. He creates Adam and Eve, and they have the law written on their hearts. And in addition to that, they were given a command by God not to eat of this tree of knowledge of good and evil. And in that time period, however long it was, that they followed that and they lived in that, they were living in perfect communion with God, which is just something like amazing for us to think about. And as a Christian, like we're looking forward to that time when we, you know, after we die and we're in heaven, and, you know, we're with God, that we're going to have that communion with him. Actually, that's what we're going back to. Right.
And in ways it's better. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm not able to like organize my thoughts as well, but there is an idea in theology that we're actually our communion coming through everything we've been through because of the crucifixion, because of communion, like being brought into new covenant and being born of Christ, that it's actually going to be an even like stronger bond, a more intimate connection with God because of everything that's gone on throughout creation. Which, yeah, maybe we'll do an episode on that once we research some more. Because like I said, I feel like it's such a cool theology. I don't want to do it an injustice, but one thing that's really cool in this, so I recently read The Mystery of Christ's Covenant and His Kingdom by Samuel Reynahan, which goes through all of the covenants in Scripture just to kind of observe how God interacts with his people through covenants. And what he pointed out, which I'd never really like applied the language to, is that this is a sense of the first covenant, and it's a sense of special revelation too. Like you mentioned, where we mentioned general revelation in creation, that's thing we have, you know, the law written on our hearts. That's generally some testament to God, but then there's things that he has to tell us specifically. And in their case, it was don't eat that fruit. They wouldn't have, you know, something in their heart that's like, don't eat that tree specifically for some reason. That was something specifically given, and it had consequences, and it had promises, which when you get into it is really what makes up a covenant. It's a deal. It's like, if you do not eat of that fruit, you will remain in perfect communion and have dominion over the earth. If you do eat that fruit, you will surely die. And it's the first covenant ever made. And I like this probably sounds really like nerdy, but what's significant about it is because Adam and Eve screwing it up, which is also why I think it's important to believe in a literal Adam and Eve, them screwing it up, breaking the covenant, brings the consequences of breaking that covenant on them and everyone who's descended from them. And we are all descended from them. And that's why it's significant that we need to be born again, because we're born in the line of Adam. We're under the curse of his disobedience. When we're born of Christ, who didn't have an earthly dad, wasn't under that line of Adam in that way, we are born to a life free of that curse, of that disobedience. That I highly recommend that book,
exactly.
Mystery of Christ, His Covenant, His Kingdom. It's a tough read, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And so I think that brings us to kind of near the end of what we're talking about today. We always try to end with a little bit of application. So we have our confidence, our conviction, and our conduct. So first of all, what we get from this, our confidence, we were made for a purpose. We were made intentionally and are valued by God because He made us. Everyone is made in the image of God and therefore has inherent value and is valued by God, and He made us. That's why He sent Christ to die for us. Like from the moment that Adam and Eve sinned and took of the tree and broke that covenant with God, you see right there in Genesis 3, God's plans already in action, that He's going to send a savior for us. Genesis 3:15 points to Christ. And so at the very beginning, right when they sin, he's already got the plan going in motion to save us from our sins, because we're valued by God, because He loves us and He made us, and we were made for a purpose, and we are to live in this purpose that Adam and Eve were living in that time, where they were perfectly aligned with the covenant and were actually following it and living in it. And the tragedy of the whole thing is they thought if they took of the fruit and of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that would make them more like God, and that would make them actually be able to be like Him. That's the temptation that Satan gives them. You could actually be like Him if you eat the tree. But the tragedy is they were like God already. They were following in His ways and in perfect communion with Him. So that's our confidence that we can have.
And that ties perfectly into how that's a conviction as well. Like on one hand, as His creations, as His creatures, we owe Him a submission and obedience. And I mean, there's our conduct too, that if we acknowledge who He is and who we are, then that will affect our hearts towards Him, towards what He wants, His laws, that even though we're not being judged by, He still says, if you love me, obey my commandments. When we understand our place as His creations, as His creatures, it should convict us and affect how we live. And then also, like you said, being made in His image, being made purposefully, every single person was. Like like it might sound kind of fluffy and lovey, but everyone was made by God for the purpose of reflecting His image, even if they're not doing it, even if they're totally rejecting Him and rebelling and turning away from Him, they still were made in His image, still made intentionally by Him. And that gives us a conviction in the way that we treat other people, even those who are rejecting God and living in sin. We need to see ourselves and each other for who we are, made in God's image.
Exactly. Well, that's chapter 4 on creation. We would love to hear your thoughts. If you're listening on creation, hey, do you believe in a literal 6 days? Are we foolish for believing so? Let us know. That's one of the fun ones that comes out of this, that conversation. As much as we joke about it, people have a lot of fun with that one for sure. So let us know your thoughts. You can join us on our Discord and talk to us about that. Instagram, DM, YouTube comment, all those things. You can do it all.
We read everything, even your snide remarks. So
yeah, we really enjoy getting snide remarks, which I don't know, I haven't gotten a lot of. Maybe there's just nothing to be snide about with me.
Yeah, it's been a minute. When we first outed ourselves as Calvinists, it was rough. But anyways, we appreciate you guys. We love talking to you. Even if you disagree with us, we just want to encourage you to have these conversations, to think through this and work out what you believe. We appreciate you being here.
And we'll see you next week.